Part 4. Port Rules under Section 445 of the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952. Under Part 13, Ports and Port Officers of the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952, Section 445(1) gives the Minister the power to make port rules for any port in Malaysia. This means that the Minister may create rules to regulate the daily operation of ports. These rules may cover matters such as traffic movement within port limits, berthing and anchorage arrangements, cargo and ballast operations, mooring and unmooring of vessels, port safety, fire control, navigation lights, vessel signals, dangerous goods, port workers' safety, port reception facilities, sewage, garbage, and marine pollution-related residues. A clear example of the Minister's delegated authority can be seen in the Port Penang Rules 1953, which were made under the powers conferred by Section 445(1) of the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952 and apply specifically to the Port of Penang. These rules regulate practical port matters in the following sequence: man-of-war anchorage, foreign-going vessels anchorage, home trade and local trade vessels anchorage, clear hawse, native sailing vessels anchorage, quarantine anchorage, dangerous petroleum anchorage, explosives anchorage, inner harbor, prohibited anchorage, restricted areas, and landing places. The legal flow is straightforward. The MSO 1952 acts as the parent law. Section 445(1) grants the Minister of Transport the authority, and the Minister exercises this power to issue port-specific subsidiary legislation, exemplified by the Port Penang Rules 1953. These rules translate the broad powers of the MSO 1952 into practical requirements, applying to vessels, masters, agents, port users, and others operating within the port area. Additionally, Section 445(2) gives these rules enforcement power, stipulating that any person who breaches a port rule, in the absence of a specific penalty, may be liable to a fine not exceeding 10,000 Malaysian ringgit, imprisonment for up to 1 year, or both. Part 5. Port Rules under the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952. Other than Port Penang Rules 1953, we can see that the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952, MSO 1952, functions as the principal legislation governing ports and shipping administration in Malaysia. It also provides the legal authority for the making of subsidiary port rules by the Minister or the relevant authority acting under delegated powers. The Port Perak Rules 1953 were made using the powers granted under Section 445(1), as explicitly stated in the opening provision of the rules. These rules regulate practical port matters such as anchorage restrictions, navigation hours, vessel movement limitations within port limits, pilotage fees, explosives anchorage control, and the movement of vessels along the Perak River, particularly within Teluk Anson and Lumut port areas. Similarly, the Port Perlis Rules 1953 were enacted under Section 445(1), confirming that the same statutory authority applies across different Malaysian port limits. These rules cover anchorage duration limits, vessel movement after 6 p.m., navigation in fog or at night, vessel responsibilities, cargo handling operations, and the master's accountability for compliance with port requirements. Later, the Kedah Port Rules 1984 were introduced under a more detailed statutory framework. They rely on Section 445(1), together with Section 244(1) of the MSO 1952. These rules govern a wide range of operational matters, including allocation of berths, submission of ship documents, heavy lift declaration requirements, prohibition of smoking near hazardous cargo operations, ship-to-ship transfer restrictions, vehicle control within port premises, protection of port infrastructure, mooring services, anchorage designation, port dues, and detention or auction of goods left within port areas. Taken together, these documents demonstrate that Section 445(1) is the primary enabling provision allowing the Minister to make port rules, while Section 244(1) supplements this authority for port administration and operational control. Through these provisions, the Minister can introduce subsidiary legislation applicable within specific port limits, ensuring safe navigation, orderly cargo handling, infrastructure protection, and regulatory supervision of vessels operating in Malaysian waters. This shows how the MSO 1952 acts as the parent statute, while instruments such as the Port Perrick Rules 1953, Port Perlis Rules 1953, and KDA Port Rules 1984 function as subsidiary legislation made under statutory authority. These rules provide the detailed operational framework governing vessel movement, anchorage, cargo handling, pilotage, safety control, and port administration within their respective port jurisdictions. This legal structure illustrates how federal maritime legislation delegates implementation powers to the minister to regulate individual port limits through subsidiary rules, ensuring that each port, whether Perrick, Perlis, or KDA, operates under a consistent national legal framework derived directly from the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952. Part 5. Collision Regulations under the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952. Having explained how the MSO 1952 regulates individual ports through subsidiary rules, we now turn to how it governs navigation safety at sea through the collision regulations under Section 252. This section gives the Minister of Transport the power to make regulations for the prevention of collisions at sea. These regulations may cover important navigation matters such as navigation lights, fog signals, steering rules, and the sailing conduct of vessels. Once these regulations are issued, they have the same legal force as if they were written directly into the MSO 1952 itself. This means that vessels must comply with them as part of Malaysian maritime law. This authority is clearly shown in the Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations Order 1984. The opening provision states that the order was made in exercise of the powers conferred under Section 252 of the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952. Through this order, Malaysia incorporated the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea 1972, commonly known as COLREG 1972, into Malaysian law. As a result, COLREG rules become legally binding on vessels operating on the high seas and on navigable waters connected to the sea within Malaysian jurisdiction. The same legal framework also allows the Minister of Transport to introduce amendments when the International Maritime Organization, or IMO, updates the COLREG Convention. This explains why the Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations Amendment Order 2000 and the Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations Amendment Order 2023 were issued. As confirmed in the Malaysia Shipping Notice MSN November 2023, the 1984 Collision Regulations Order continues to operate through the amendments made in 2000 and 2023. These amendments help ensure that Malaysia's navigation rules remain aligned with updated international collision prevention standards. In terms of enforcement, Section 252(3) of the MSO 1952 states that any master of a vessel who fails to comply with the collision regulations commits an offense. Upon conviction, the master may be liable to a fine not exceeding 10,000 Malaysian ringgit for each offense. This shows that compliance with COLREG-based navigation rules is not optional. It is a legal requirement under Malaysian maritime law. Compliance is also supported through Section 81 of the MSO 1952. This section requires every shipowner to ensure that the latest Malaysian legislation, notices, international rules, and maritime safety publications are available on board the vessel. Since the Collision Regulations Order 1984 and its later amendments form part of Malaysia's maritime safety legislation, the shipowner must ensure that these documents are available on board. If the owner fails to comply, Section 81(3) provides that the owner may be liable to a fine not exceeding 25,000 Malaysian ringgit for each ship. Therefore, the legal structure operates in a clear sequence. First, Section 252 of the MSO 1952 empowers the Minister of Transport to make collision regulations by order. Second, the Minister exercised this power by issuing the Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations Order 1984, which incorporated COLREG 1972 into Malaysian law. Third, later amendments in 2000 and 2023 were introduced to keep Malaysia aligned with updated international navigation safety requirements. Finally, enforcement is supported through Section 252(3), which provides penalties for non-compliance with navigation rules, and Section 81(3), which provides penalties if vessels fail to carry the required legislation and safety publications on board. This ensures that Malaysia's maritime law remains consistent with international standards for preventing collisions at sea. That concludes our overview of Malaysia's maritime legal framework, including the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952, port rules under Section 445, and collision regulations under Section 252. We've explored how the MSO 1952 serves as the parent law, empowering the minister to issue subsidiary legislation to ensure safe and orderly port operations as well as navigation safety at sea.
Thank you for watching, and we hope this video has helped you understand how Malaysia's maritime laws maintain compliance with both national and international standards.